from My Mum the Teacher, and in this video I am going to be showing you how you can use the teacher program compliance checklist to put together your teacher program and ensure that everything that you need in there to be compliant should an audit happen is in there, and that process is as stress-free as possible, because it may seem like a big job, but really once you do it, most of the information is in there and you don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to flick around now and show you my program and how it looks and what your program can look like if you use that checklist. So this is how my teacher program looks when we first look at the folder. It's got a good cover page on it that clearly states it's my teacher program, has my name, the year that I am teaching, as well as the current year that this program is relevant for. When we open it up, I include the teacher program compliance checklist in there, and this just shows anyone that picks it up what is going to be in my program, and that I have ticked them off, or they can just know where everything is and where to find it. So if we have a look more closely at what is included, we have school documents. So within the school documents section, you will find the school profile. Now this is something that you can just write up on your own. So it just has to be a 1 to 2 A4 page briefly outlining everything there is to know about the school. So where it is, the socioeconomic makeup of the school and its surrounding area, what classes it has in the school, what programs the school offers, the cultures that the school has within it, anything that would be of interest to someone who has never come to this school before. That's what you put in the school profile. So we then move on to the school plan. Now this is something individual to each school, and you can just find this on a school's website, as it should be readily available to staff and the wider school community. So you would pop that in there. You'll also pop in the school logo and motto, and this just helps, again, anyone new to the school familiarise themselves basically with what the school stands for and what its core values are. School map is hugely important, especially if you are in a very large campus or if you're in a high school and you are constantly moving between quite a few classrooms. We then have a school calendar. Now your school might just do term by term. They might put out a whole year. However they do it, just make sure that it is current as often as possible, because things do change due to weather or unforeseen circumstances. New events might pop up throughout the year. So just make sure you're updating this regularly, as again, anyone that comes into the school and has a look at your program needs to know that you know what's going on in regards to the rest of the whole school. The school timetable. So this is really important. Again, if you're on a large campus, it just helps you know where everybody is at a certain time, and anybody that comes into your classroom know that they can find people and where they can find them as well. So school staff organisation. So this is just, who's teaching what class. It would be your executive list, your point of contact for certain things. So, you might have your supervisor or your head teacher, your deputies, and then your principal. You would also have in this section any staff that are running certain programs within the school, year coordinators, subject coordinators, anything like that goes in there, and how to contact them as well would go in there. So their email is probably the best thing to put in there. School programs, so these can be your English language learners, your learning support programs, you might have things with local community groups. That all just goes in there. Again, all you're doing is thinking that anybody that doesn't know the school or is coming into the school for the first time should be able to pick this program up, read through, and get a really good idea of what is happening in the school at that current moment in time. So that's why we include things like, the programs that are currently happening within the school. School policies and procedures. This is really important from a legal standpoint, because you need to show that you are following the school's policies, procedures, and then when an audit occurs, the school needs to show that these are in line with your state or territory's educational authorities' policies and procedures. So what you do in your classroom should link to this. And again, anybody that comes in should be able to pick this up and read, okay, this is how behavior is handled in this school. If a health issue arrives, this is what occurs. If there's a lockdown, if there's an emergency evacuation, all those things are going to be found in these policies and procedure documents. So they should just be able to follow them and be able to find them as well really easily in your program. After that, we then go on to class documents. So these are things like your class profile. So much like the school profile, it is just a simple A4 page document that outlines the dynamics of the class. So how many girls to boys, or if there's only girls, only boys, the ages of students, the demographics of students, their cultures, whether there's any specific learning needs in that class, whether there's any major health issues that you need to be aware of, or any other concerns that someone needs to be aware of, whether you encourage parents and carers to come into the classroom or the school to connect with your class or the school community. All those things can be put in just to a simple A4 document that, again, if someone were to come in, they could read this and get a really good idea of your class and the students within it. We then go on to a class list, which is basically just your role. So it just tells, their first and last name. It might have on there their date of birth, maybe their address, and religion. If you're in a religious school, even if you're not, it sometimes includes information, and as well as health issues, learning difficulties, anything like that, you can pop in your class list. Student profiles, this just is a more detailed look at those students who require additional help, whether that be for health reasons, disability reasons. You could do one on each student in your class if you have a smallish single stream primary classroom, for example. It's not necessary. This is more just to do with students who have healthcare plans, individual education or behaviour plans. That all goes into this section here. We then have a class timetable. So if you're in a primary classroom, again, just make sure it's updated in case it changes term by term. If you're in a high school setting or a middle school setting, you might include the subjects that you teach for each class and put those timetables in there. Student organisation. Now this has a few things in there. So this is where you would show seating chart, your classroom management strategies, your student groupings, for example. So some schools might split students in larger year groups according to ability for, say, literacy and numeracy, or there's just more than one class, so they split them into 3. So you would put those in there, and that's really important for future planning on classes as well, because you can mark down if there's any issues between students that occur, or you just think, these 2 students need a break from each other this year or whatever. So make sure you put those in there. Your classroom management strategy. So again, it's just a really brief but clear rundown of the expectations you have for the students in your class and how you enact those in your class. So how you reward positive behaviors, how we identify and deal with negative behaviors, and again, just a simple outline of some of the rewards and consequences that can be offered. We then go on to assessment data tracking. This is really important, again, for legal reasons, and also it will help you when it comes to reporting. So you might have things like the NAPLAN results. You may include other things like South Australian spelling results or their SENA maths results. We then go into half-yearly and yearly report, grades that you can put in there. And this is just a really good snapshot of where students are sitting, and it helps you identify any students that might need to be targeted within certain areas. You can put down the bottom here, you can see, critically low scores and what that score is. And that means that, you would need to sit down with, your stage cohorts or your learning and support team, and just see how you're best going to support those students to achieve and continue their learning development. So that is the assessment and data tracking. We then go on to staff roles and responsibilities. So this just outlines your roles in the class and any other staff that interact with your class. So whether you have aides coming into your class, you might have people that take over and run creative arts or PD health. Any of those staff roles and responsibilities you pop in there again, so that anybody can come to your class, read this and go, oh, okay, so-and-so takes PD health on a Tuesday afternoon, while I get my release time. That's all in there. And staff timetable again. So this would be your timetable. So you might put in their duty rosters. You might have your aides timetable. So when they come into the class, or if they're going to work with the class or pull out certain students, you pop any of those timetables in there. Then we get into our teaching and learning, the most important part of our job. So this is basically where you show what you are doing in your class. So the first thing to start with is yearly overviews. So you would outline these hopefully at the beginning of the year. You can see I've got a few here. It just has term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, and it has all the subjects that are covered across your school. If you're in a religious school, you would have another column for religious studies, and anything that is going to be studied that year, the topics you put in there. We then go into our specific subjects. So mostly they're all the same. They will have the same requirements. So to start with, you will have your scope and sequence, which would look something like this. Again, it's broken down into the terms. You have your outcomes, whether there's any differentiation. So your core content, how many weeks each topic runs for, and then your assessments, as well as the general capabilities and cross-curriculum capabilities outlined. And then you just break it down into each term or each block that you teach. And then here, these are just some of my pro formas that you can find on my website. So within each of these, this is what an audit requires you to show. So an overview rationale, your cross-curriculum and quality teaching framework is in there as well. We outline the outcomes and the content skills or descriptors, the related outcomes, and this just helps you show differentiation. So if you have students that are being extended, you would show those outcomes that they're working towards, and those that are being supported, the outcomes that they're working towards. We then have, for literacy and numeracy, you have a link to the progressions. Then we go into our term overview and our assessments and where they occur across the term. Your resources, ASD specific strategies. So these are some of the things that you might do in your class to cater to those students with ASD and other learning needs. And then we go into the actual learning experience. So this is a week breakdown. Clear, it's easy, it covers everything. You've got your outcomes, you've got your QTF, your evidence of learning and formative assessment, your summative assessment, as well as your evaluations down here. Once you've done your term unit, we then go on to do a unit evaluation for each unit that we cover, and then the evidence of student learning. So that is basically how I structure my program and how it has evolved since that very first time I got audited. And as I've said, this program model has now been taken on by a number of schools because it does meet compliance very well, and it's also ensures that, as I said, anybody can walk in, pick this up and carry on from where I left off and know the expectations that I had for the class, how I ran my lessons and activities, and it just ensures there's continuity across not only my classroom but the whole school. So I hope you found this really useful, and I hope it gives you a good understanding of teacher planning and programming and how your program can look.